to be able to tell them what phase of treatment they're in. How are the carriers going to use this information? They're going to say for the average corneal foreign body, based upon 1 million claims that we've received, a foreign body in the right eye requires, 3 visits, 2 under active management and 2 subsequent, and the incidence of sequela is very low. So they'll be able to analyze all of this data and use it to create a new payment system in the very similar here. Okay, causes of injury. So if the patient was, what caused the injury? And again, you want to have a very, very good search engine to help you with this information, because I can tell you, you're going to want to search all sorts of different things. If the patient says, look, I was playing basketball and that's what happened, I got hit by a basketball in the eye, I'd want to be able to look up, basketball, struck by basketball. What was my activity that I was doing? Was basketball. I was struck by a basketball, and that's my code that I would use for my injury. If I was, we always kind of laugh at the stuff like this, but if I was pecked by a chicken, we've heard all different things. I guess you can have pecked by a chicken. You could even have pecked by a turkey if that's what you encountered. So again, the power of your technology is really what's going to be able to drive you to be able to code these things properly. We just have to make sure that, again, the 7th character matches up with what we used in our injury. So anytime you use an A in the injury, you use an A as the cause of injury as well as the 7th digit. Okay, so again, classify the type of injury by anatomical site, classify the injury by stage of visit, classify the cause of injury, and classify the activity the patient was performing while the injury was sustained. High-risk medications become a little bit more specific, whereas right now, if you're monitoring somebody with Plaquenil or something like that, we're only using a code that says, long-term use of high-risk medications, right? In the ICD-10, we have a much more specific code, Plaquenil use for rheumatoid arthritis. You would always report it in addition to the type of rheumatoid arthritis that they have, okay? So remember, type of disease and then also use of the medication or use of the drug. That's how we would do it for Plaquenil. So what are you going to do, right? So let's talk about your action plan. If you guys haven't done anything yet and you're right at 6 weeks for implementation, I don't want you to go into a panic, okay? That's the worst thing that you could do. What I want you to do is I really want you to take a good hard look at your practice and build a practical plan that you can implement easily and get some good results from. So what I've done is try to think about how can we create a 10-step plan for the things that you need to think about. First of all, why bother spending the time at this stage of the game learning all of these weird esoteric codes? That doesn't make any sense at all. What you should be doing is spending time to learn the codes that your practice has been using. So I would go to your existing EHR or practice management system, print out the top 30 ICD-10 codes that you have already been using for the last 2 years. Organize them in descending order. The most frequent ones that you're using at the top of the list, the less frequent ones as we go down the list, okay? Then separate those into appropriate categories. We all know that your refractive codes are going to be the most frequently that you use. Myopia is going to probably be your #1 code, followed by probably presbyopia, followed by astigmatism, followed by hyperopia. Start to separate these, and then what I want you to do is whatever technology that you're using for your conversion algorithm, if you're using CodeSafe Plus, then use that and assign it to everybody in your practice. Be able to log into your system and say, hey, Jenny, you're responsible for myopia. Hey, David, you're responsible for astigmatism. Hey, Sam, I want you to work with presbyopia. And I want everybody to research it. Come back tomorrow. We're going to discuss the refractive diagnoses and what they convert to. So that way we can have some familiarity with it. I don't expect you guys to memorize these things. I don't expect it to be natural instinct at the very start. I want you to know how to use your conversion technology for at least the first 90 days until these things start to become very familiar for you. I want you to create a timetable so that way you can make sure you get your top 30 into the next 6 weeks, all right? I want to make sure that you've got everything working as smoothly as it possibly can be. You may want to develop a testing system to make sure that everybody in your practice knows how to do these things, because you're going to need to be able to spot check them at any given time to make sure that you're providing accurate information on your claims. Remember, the laws are not going to get any less lenient, okay, on you. You're still going to have to, make sure that you're doing things correctly. Contact your EHR vendor. Make sure that they are ready to receive the ICD-10s. Check with them to see if you're able to practice with the ICD-10s in your current EHR system. Contact your clearinghouse. Make sure that they're equipped to communicate the ICD-10s by October 1. Call your contractors, make sure that, or your contracted carriers, make sure that both your refractive carriers and your medical carriers are ready to process your claims in ICD-10 language on October 1. Keep in mind that the ICD-10s are not going to go away, okay? Excuse me, this is a typo, my bad. That should be September 30th of 2016. Okay, because for any dates of service, for 1 year in arrears, you can bill. Remember, you have to use those ICD-9s for any date of service prior to October 1 of 2015. And then what I would do is create a point person in your practice that's going to monitor changes, rules, regulations, organizing spot checks on your claims. A single person should be responsible for change management, right? Somebody that's going to be able to research, collect information, and disseminate it into the practice overall. Okay, any questions up to this point? We're good? Okay.
Good.
One last thing I want to touch before we kind of dive into a couple of cases. What happens if you screw up? Well, there's two things that you need to know with the Medicare system. Number one, Medicare has said, and this is specific to Medicare only, that they will not withhold payment, okay, as long as you get the category of the disease correctly. And it will not withhold payment if the digits after the decimal point are incorrect. That does not mean that you can submit an unspecified code. They still want you to be as specific as possible, but they will not deny your payment, and it will not affect your quality reporting through the PQRS, the value-based modifier, or your meaningful use if that the codes after the decimal point are not exactly right. Okay, so what we want you to do is choose a valid code from the right family. That means the first 3 characters have to be from the right category of disease. The second thing that I want you to know is that Medicare is not requiring you to submit cause of injury and place of injury as of October 1. Encouraged, for sure. Required, not at this time. I do know that keep your internal standards very, very high, because not every other carrier follows Medicare's rules, and that's going to create additional exposure for you. Aaron, I see that we have 2 more questions that came in, and why don't you ask me those while I kind of go down through and choose our very first case, okay?
Sounds good. If someone comes back for a follow-up after October 1st, do we put in the new ICD-10 codes or keep the ICD-9?
No, you would want to use the ICD-10s. For any date of service after October 1, you use the ICD-10s.
Okay. And where's the best place to buy the books you referred to? Is it on the AOA, or where would you recommend for that?
My particular recommendation is buying it from either the American Medical Association. You can also go on to Amazon and buy it. I would encourage you to get the ICD-10. Let me just pull my book so I can read the exact title for you. Hold on one quick second. ICD-10-CM, Charlie Michael, code set. And it's a you know, pretty thick book, about 800, 900 pages. But that is the book that I would get.
All right, that's all we have for now.
Okay, great. I want to just go through a couple of cases. I understand that I'm over my hour. If those of you who have to go, I certainly understand, and I apologize for running a little long. I just didn't want to compromise the material. So I'm going to do just one or two cases, and then we're going to finish up. So if you'd like to hang with me, that's great. If you need to go, I certainly understand, but I would encourage you to download the presentation and the handout from the members only website. And again, if you don't have access to that, please register with Aaron for that, okay? So viral conjunctivitis, let's just go ahead and take a look at how that's going to look in the ICD-10. So when I'm looking at a patient, let's say I have a 23-year-old white female that comes in that has VSP and Blue Cross. The chief complaint, patient says, hey, I've got a painful red, watery, light-sensitive eye, primarily my right eye. Patient currently wearing monthly disposable contact lenses, not sure of what care products that they're using. So you go through, you do your clinical case history that's appropriate, your clinical testing that's appropriate. You see a presentation, something like this. How does that look in the ICD-9? Well, there's certain things that I want to make sure that I'm orienting you to. So this is my ICD-9 diagnosis, my date of service, my place of service, the CPT codes that I did, and then also the mapping from the procedure to the diagnosis, my charges, and then my units. Now notice that I've got a 2 over here, but I've only got an RT here. That means that I did the adenovirus test in just the right eye, but I'm billing the carrier for 2 eyes. So that's what's wrong with this particular claim. So how does this look in the ICD-10? In the ICD-10, I'm going to code my procedure, my office visit. If I did a clinical lab test in one eye, I would signify which eye that was in. I'm then going to then diagnose what kind of viral conjunctivitis that I'm dealing with. So remember, the viral conjunctivitises are not in the H chapter. They are not in chapter 7. They are in chapter B because they are an exclusion. They are another type of disease that has an ocular effect. So you're going to have to be the doctor and determine what kind of viral conjunctivitis do they have. If you don't know and you can't diagnose a specific type of viral conjunctivitis, I would encourage you to use other viral conjunctivitis rather than unspecified viral conjunctivitis, okay? So again, if you can't determine the specific type of conjunctivitis, use other rather than unspecified, all right? So if you saw the patient for a follow-up, remember my CPT coding doesn't change, neither does my diagnoses. Remember, there is not an active treatment, follow-up treatment, or a sequela when I'm dealing with a disease. Those only pertain to injuries. So again, not that much different than what you're doing in the ICD-9. It's just using a different code. All right? So pretty straightforward. I'm going to jump forward and see if we can go into corneal abrasion here. So I've got a 34-year-old Asian male that comes in, no refractive insurance, high deductible medical insurance, wears daily disposable lenses for sports and just social, thinks he scratched his right eye. So you've got an appearance, like this. So this case history is completely inadequate, by the way, for an ICD-10 case history. What else am I going to need to know? Well, if you scratched your right eye, what do you think scratched your right eye? Oh, I was playing basketball. I got hit in the face with the basketball. Great. Now I have the activity that you were doing and what caused the injury as well. So my therapy that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to show you why this is so important. Remember, if you're going to apply a bandage contact lens, and I'm using this case specifically, remember 92070 is an old code that disappeared in 2012. The new code is 92071. It is a unilateral code. I bring this to your attention for a very specific reason. When I'm coding this in the ICD-9, notice that I have superficial injury of cornea. That's my diagnosis. Not very specific, is it? Date of service, place of service, my 2 CPT codes that I did, but notice that something's wrong with this claim, right? I don't have a designator for which eye I fit the bandage contact lens on. Why is that important? Because in the ICD-10, this right eye designation of the procedure is going to have to match up with the right eye designation of the code right there, okay? So how would I code it in the ICD-10? Injury of conch and corneal abrasion without foreign body, right eye, initial encounter. What was I doing? Right? Striking against or struck by another object, initial encounter. So the A here matches up with the A here. Activity, basketball. Place of injury, basketball court as place of occurrence of external cause. All right? So those would be the 4 ICD-10 codes that I would use as compared to a single diagnosis that I would use in the ICD-9. So again, type of injury, cause of injury, activity, and place. All of those different things need to be brought in when I'm actually coding an injury type of a clinical presentation. Okay? So again, follow-up visits, if the patient is no longer under active management, then you'd be again seeing them. Notice that the only thing that has changed, I'm not putting another bandage contact lens on, so I just have only the office visit. It's now just a follow-up, so that changes to a D. Everything else here remains the same. No changes at all. Pretty straightforward, okay? I want to go to one other case, and that's the case of epilation. Let me see if I can get down here to trichiasis, and this will be our last case, and we'll finish things up. I've got an 85-year-old black female that comes in that has Medicare. Complaints are my glasses aren't working very well, glare, hard to drive at night. My left eye waters a lot. I rub it constantly. So in this particular situation, she's got really some nuclear sclerosis that's going on, primarily in the right eye that's causing the decreased vision. Notice that she's hyperopic and astigmatic and presbyopic, okay? So when I'm going to be looking at the situation, she's got some entropion as well that's causing some abrasion to that lower cornea there. I want to be able to epilate. So in this particular situation, here's how I code it, right? I mean, this is a totally messed up case. I put this in there to point out a lot of different coding things. What I'm going to focus on is the ICD-10 aspect of things. I did my exam, my refraction, my epilation, and potentially an anterior segment photo. My pointers here are all messed up in the ICD-9. Okay, so ICD-10, here's how it's actually going to be coded. My examination was going to be coded with, right, what's going to be my primary diagnosis, age-related nuclear cataract right eye. That's the 2, okay, that designates things here, okay. I then have hyperopia bilaterally, astigmatism bilaterally, presbyopia by definition is bilateral. Notice that I also have my lower left lid. I went ahead and epilated. The E2 correlates with the trichiasis diagnosis, trichiasis without entropion, left lower lid. So again, what I'm going to have to look at is what's going on and how do I correlate my codes together, right, so everything can match appropriately here. That's the true key to the ICD-10, a very detailed medical record that's going to allow you to be able to create your very detailed diagnoses at the end of your case. So when we go into September, all right, what we're going to do is review the ICD system, histories of ICD-9, talk briefly about your game plan, how it's going, because remember at that point in time it's going to be T-minus 30 days basically. Just want to review your medical necessity and your chief complaint. Make sure that you know that your medical record is really the key to your success in the ICD-10. And then we're going to jump into some posterior segment clinical cases coded first in the ICD-9 and then coded secondly in the ICD-10. All right. So I want to thank you for your participation. I know that, I don't know, Jim, did you want to make a few closing comments, or Aaron?
Yeah, we will do that. Just wanted to ask Dr. Rumpakis if I don't see any questions, but were there any closing questions? If you got a minute or two, I don't see any coming up, but we'll go ahead and walk through this. And if anybody has one dying last-minute question, please submit that. Otherwise, first off, I wanted to say thank you, Dr. Rumpakis. We really appreciate you walking through this great material this evening.
I appreciate it, Jim. The privilege is mine.
And to everyone else, thank you all for taking time out of your meeting. Hopefully you found this very helpful info. Actually, we do have, well, the point would be we have a question about follow-up, which is great. So the slide that Dr. Rumpakis just showed, September 2nd, please mark that as a follow-up date. For the information that he mentioned. In addition, this information and presentation that Dr. Rumpakis went through will be available through the OptiPort member-only website. And if you don't know how to get there, if you just go to optiport.com and then go in the upper right-hand corner, there's a login sign, and you can log right in, or you can actually register and then be approved to get access to this presentation you went through tonight. In addition, questions between now and September 2nd, there are two ways we can get questions and answers from Dr. Rumpakis. One would be if you want to go, again, through the member-only website, there is a LinkedIn forum, a private confidential forum for only OptiPort members through the OptiPort LinkedIn page, and you can ask questions through that process, which we will then forward to Dr. Rumpakis. In addition, if you wanted to just use email, you can email us at solutions@optiport.com, and Erin will make sure she funnels those questions to Dr. Rumpakis between now and the 2nd. So thanks again for all your time, and one last point or date to put on your calendar. September 16th in Las Vegas is the OptiPort Spark Conference, the day before the Vision Expo show, and we will additionally have agenda items that do relate to last-minute preparations for ICD-10 for your company as well. So a lot coming up, obviously a big topic, and hopefully we're able to provide the information you need to best prepare your company. Thanks again for your all's time, and have a nice evening.
Thank you, everybody. Aaron, are you still there?